Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Question Box, your weekly gaming talk show where we bring into question only the most important gaming news, topics, and trends from the week in the industry that we love. I am your host, Shane Bailey, and every week I'm joined by one good friend from the Australian and New Zealand gaming community. And tonight I have the distinct pleasure of bringing on the sexiest person from the Back Pocket crew, Pete Burns.
Thank you very much, Shane. And yeah, that wasn't prompted by me.
No.
I think that was just inspired by you looking at me on camera just
No,
now.
exactly. Like
Correct?
it was the first thing that came to mind when I was going to introduce him. Like there is no other title, befitting
Fitting.
of you and your anyway. How are you, my friend?
Very good. Not feeling particularly sexy, but every little bit helps. So I
No?
appreciate the compliment.
Astra jabs don't make you feel that bit more
I,
attractive. No?
I don't feel more attractive, but I do feel halfway towards feeling like I'm safe in this world again. I'm looking forward to getting the final Astra shot.
That's
in about 8 weeks.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's still
that's almost as comforting as feeling like the sexiest man in
Yeah.
the Back Pocket crew. Thank you to Nitro
Absolutely.
Tex for joining us.
There he is.
Yes, and thank you to everyone else joining us in chat as well. We hope you chime in on the conversation. For those of you tuning in for the first time, like I said at the top of the show, the Question Box is our weekly gaming talk show. I bring on guests from the Australian and New Zealand games industry to talk about the most important gaming topics, news, and trends from the industry that we know and love. The first segment is what we call the top three. We'll picking three of the most important topics and news stories from our industry and diving deep into those before question time in the latter half of the show, where we bring into question one big topic, theme, or trend to really discuss, dissect, and pull apart all its fantastic pieces and get really nerdy about the things that we love. We've got a great show ahead of us. It's jam-packed with, hold back your excitement, financial earnings, Pete.
Yes.
Amazing,
Give me
right?
those percentages.
I was about to
Tell
say.
me about. I want to know all about share portfolios, mate.
Thank you. Yes, of
All
course.
the deets.
Of course you do. Yeah, step aside E3. This is the most exciting time of the year. Financial earning reports from all the big publishers in our industry. Pete, are you ready to get into the top three?
Let's get stuck in.
Beautiful.
Sure.
The first publisher to the stand is Electronic Arts themselves. They have just recently come off the back of what many describe to be a relatively strong EA Live showcase, in which they revealed more on Battlefield, new seasons for Apex and some of their other live service games like Knockout City. We also got the announcement for the Dead Space remake as well. And their Q1 earnings for this financial year, starting July 1st, have dropped. We head on over to gamesindustry.biz, where managing editor Brendan Sinclair has this story: EA Q1 better than expected, but bookings down 4%. Let me change the overlay. That's not the overlay that I wanted. There we go. He says, or EA have said, Andrew Wilson, Australian CEO, by the way, quote, "We've had a very strong start to the fiscal year with our incredible teams delivering experiences that continue to bring hundreds of millions of players together. Our new launches, leading games, and live services all had an outstanding quarter. With our expanding EA Sports portfolio, more amazing experiences in Apex Legends, the groundbreaking new Battlefield 2042, and our leading live services, including mobile, we're set to deliver more great games and content to players this year." EA doing very well. Pete, but just quickly, what did you think of their most recent EA Live showcase? Obviously, they didn't have some big hitters like Mass Effect or Dragon Age there, but at least for the most part, I thought it was a pretty good showing.
Yeah, me too. I think they played it smart in kind of tempering expectations and letting people know beforehand that you're not going to see Mass Effect, you're not going to see Dragon Age. BioWare's sleeping right now. Yeah, it was cool. It was nice to see the smaller titles. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of that cool little indie dice gothic
Lost
game.
in Random?
Lost in Random. Lost in Random was nice to see up front. It's good to see when big publishers, Microsoft tend to do it quite a lot, put a lot of faith in these smaller titles and put them right up front and go like, this is something to look out for. I was watching on YouTube. The chat hated it, but what did the chat know? bugger off. It was show more Apex. And they finally got their Apex, and Apex obviously is a smash hit for EA at the moment. But yeah, I really like EA, even through all the worst company in the world phase. You know, I've loved a lot of the titles that they put out, so excited to see them doing well. Obviously, It Takes Two this year is like a Game of the Year contender for me.
Definitely, yeah.
And Battlefield is looking as good as it ever has with 2042, and particularly Portal they showed off at this latest event. So very exciting. A lot of cool stuff.
No, definitely. And that was kind of where I want to position this discussion is a couple of weeks ago, I had Steve Wright from Stevivor on the show. And off the back of the EA Play Live event, I asked the question, is this the... are we on the cusp of an EA resurgence right now? You know, he made fun of my optimism. Said, "He goes, Shane, you're crazy." But I look at their upcoming slate and just think to myself, wow, this is. I think they're better positioned than they ever have been, at least in the last 5 years, from my perspective. I just want to quickly go over to Kotaku, where Alex Walker penned a piece noting out of the financial results that Mass Effect Legendary Edition sold well above EA's expectations. A quote from them says, "There is enduring power to the franchises and IP that we are building. The launch of Mass Effect Legendary Edition, the remaster of the first 3 Mass Effect games, reignited the passion of fans around the world, driving sales performance well above our expectations. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, coming to Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, was also a moment for new and returning players to jump into that amazing game. We are continuing to invest in both of these franchises, as well as more of our amazing IP." So, look, not a... I think they'd already confirmed that Respawn are onto a sequel or a new entry in the Jedi Fallen Order franchise. Obviously, we have the announcement for Mass Effect. There was a report as well, I'm not entirely sure if it was confirmed though, that Dragon Age 4 has been removing some of its live game elements following, you know, some of the you know, the less than stellar results for titles like Anthem and whatnot. So yeah, I'm just seeing all these pieces move in such synchronicity to be like, I think we're on... I think the next 2 to 3 years for EA is looking fantastic, if of course they can deliver on the titles. Do you think I'm crazy, Pete? Or
I don't think you're crazy. I think we're a far cry from when I can't, like maybe 3 years ago, was it, when we heard single player games are dead basically from EA. And I don't even remember exactly who said it. It was probably Wilson, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
He's a flip-flopper.
he runs his mouth. He's
But you know, like they have, and we saw it with Mass Effect Legendary as a standout example of how strong their IP is and how much affection audiences have for it. And treated right, you know, they have so many strong brands underneath the EA umbrella. And we're about to see a bunch of them. For me, Dead Space, I'm so pumped to play more Dead Space. And that's on top of, you know, Dead Space. Mass Effect is a new Mass Effect coming outside of Legendary Edition. More Battlefield. Who doesn't want more Battlefield? Obviously, they've had in recent years a loss in Star Wars not being exclusively EA published anymore. I think Disney maybe saw that they'd potentially get better. I love Jedi Fallen Order, but maybe they would get a more diverse and effective scheme of Star Wars games by reaching outside of just EA. But you know, I think that's the only real loss they've had. They still don't look great when they put Ultimate Team up the front of their sports games, and they're just microtransaction gambling horrorscapes. I personally don't play a lot of sports titles, so that's not in my face all the time. And I would never laud them for being the kings of microtransactions, because, like, you know, that's a part of the part of the gaming scene that I don't love. But this kind of focus back into single player or even co-op experiences with It Takes Two, I think is exciting for me as a lover of a lot of these IPs.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Dead Space. There was a note out of the earnings report. That note, I go over to Stevivor, where Steve Wright put together a piece saying that both Skate 4 and the Dead Space remake are, quote, a little ways out. The full quote is, going back to the original and having the opportunity to do so on next-gen consoles excited everyone on the team. This is EA Motive's Philippe Deschamps. Quote, as we look to modernize the game, we've reached out to dedicated teams and invited them to provide us with feedback since the early stages of production and to deliver the Dead Space game they want for new players to enjoy as well. So, yeah, I mean, a little ways out. I'm suspecting that we don't see either of these games next year, and I think they're
maybe 2023. Yeah, I think that would be earliest. Yeah.
So look, that's still it's potentially a long tail for this resurgence that we're sort of hypothesizing here. But I look at their recent move to acquire Codemasters, a very talented studio as well, and I think to myself. They've noted they've seen this groundswell of enthusiasm for franchises like Mass Effect, Dead Space, and Skate. Do you think we see more franchise revivals potentially from EA? The first one that jumps to mind for me is obviously the acquisition of Codemasters and a potential Burnout maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, nice.
I would love that.
I'm sure EA would love to slap an EA logo at the front of that, a new Burnout title as well. Yeah, that would be amazing. One thing that we were talking about on Back Pocket was like the idea of broadening out how they reach out to sports fans with titles maybe a bit broader or more weird and interesting. But the Olympics is happening right now. Like, could there be a cool track and field EA title that kind of sees us doing some shot put and javelin? And just plug in those modules as like yearly kind of expansions to EA Sports and on the field or whatever,
right.
Something like that. I'd like to see them do a bit more outside of, obviously the classics are working for them with soccer, football, and NFL football in Madden. So we don't have enough sports games with foot in them, with ultimate teams in them, do we?
I was about to say, well, let's just try and pick any sport that can fit the ultimate team model.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's your likely candidate right there. But in terms of dormant IP from EA, are there any other than potentially Burnout that you would like to see come back in the same style as Skate or Dead Space?
Yeah, look, off the top of the dome, nothing's leaping out, because a lot of the EA titles that let me do a quick scan.
Go for it. Yeah, EA... actually, I'm starting to think of the more modern iterations. I'm thinking of like 360 PS3 gen, where obviously they took another stab at Mirror's Edge. I believe they published
Mirror's Edge deserves another crack.
Yeah, you think it deserves another crack?
Yeah, I think so. I think that second stab was just a stab in the wrong direction.
Right.
From the cool mechanics of the first. They kind of took a misstep with thinking they had something that they didn't with the sequel, instead of just honing in on what made the first one so interesting.
Right.
Obviously Titanfall, I'd love to see.
Yes.
After Titanfall 2's campaign was incredible. One of the best shooter campaigns, I think, of all time.
Agreed.
So while Apex is a fantastic battle royale, it would be a shame if Titanfall 3 never happened, just because Apex is being has become a success for Respawn.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar vein to someone like Insomniac, I'm sort of the mind you give Respawn carte blanche to do whatever they want, because they seem to just make gold out of that studio with anything that they do. So I'm struggling to think of anything other, and I go back further.
Do we need another Crisis?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. What's
are we due?
What's Crytek doing? Maybe they could. I hear shooters are popular. Maybe they can come back. Funnily enough, my mind jumps to the old Lord of the Rings games on Xbox and PS2. Remember those?
Yep. The Two Towers and Return of the King. They got the license to, didn't they? Because the first, I mean, they were a lot of fun. They were very slashy and cool. The first. The Fellowship of the Ring game was published by someone completely different and was very much focused on the books. So Tom Bombadil was in it. It was much more of an action RPG than it was there were still RPG elements in the EA ones, but it was much more of an action slasher, kind of moving through little kind of maps as opposed to kind of feeling like a broad picture book kind of thing. But they were a lot of fun. And climbing the Tower of Orthanc in that kind of wave mode as well. I spent a lot of time in those games. They were awesome.
I can tell, yeah, you're remembering a lot more than I am at this point. Joshy20 in chat, thanks for joining us. I never got out of that mine with the rocks crashing down in Lord of the Rings. I do remember now here we go. Now I'm just going to embarrass myself because I can't remember the name of the troll from Fellowship. It was Fellowship, right? That eventually stabs Frodo, and he's wearing the elven.
You're asking for you think you're embarrassing yourself by not remembering the name of the troll in the Fellowship of the Ring?
No.
Its name?
No, not its name, but like it was
the
a specific troll. It's a cave troll. Okay, it was a cave troll. Okay,
they have a cave troll.
There's a cave
troll. He comes in, he stabs it. It's got the mithril. He's fine.
Okay, Gary. Yes, thank you, Evil Spy Boy.
Yeah, Evil Spy Boy's onto it. Gary the cave troll.
Yes.
Yeah. People cheers to Gary that night for getting a stab in.
Exactly. Yeah, he played his part very well. Anyway, look. So that's sort of like the question I want to pose. Are we on the cusp of an EA resurgence? I think I am, and I will clip this later. And take credit for it in 2024 when Skate 4 and Dead Space are in Game of the Year contention.
Yep, good. And Mass Effect.
Oh, Mass Effect, yep, still on its way. Dragon Age 4, when's that going to land?
Dragon Age?
I've never been into Dragon Age. Did you
I'm not a
partake? No?
Yeah, I'm not a huge... I didn't play them because I think I just came off the back of Mass Effect too closely.
Right.
To go, like, I didn't need another BioWare fare that I knew was going to be really detailed and deep, and I would want to spend hundreds of hours in it. And I maybe felt like I didn't have the energy to put into them that they deserved.
Yeah.
So I kind of quietly watched that series do well from the sidelines, and obviously it's had its hiccups along the way, but it's another series that has a lot of affection out there. So I'm sure a new title treated correctly, not as a live service game, but as a single player game that deserves to be a single player game, then yeah, it should do as well as we expect BioWare to pump out. And obviously BioWare coming off Andromeda, which
and Anthem,
and Anthem, which Anthem, I don't think there's any kind of split opinion on that. Andromeda, I think, had a lot going for it, and it suffered a lot from that new engine and those animations being just a disaster in a hilarious way, but in often a game ruining way of like your father died, and it's like. Like, okay, what am I watching here?
Lord Phoenix liked Andromeda. Yeah, I'm seeing a bit of.
I'm
not sure I would call it revisionist history because there's still a lot of people out there who really dislike Andromeda. But I feel as though the people who did enjoy Andromeda are still the ones being more vocal about it. So whenever the topic is brought up, you often hear, "I actually liked Andromeda. It didn't really deserve the hate that it got." By the time Mass Effect 3 came out for me, I was kind of done with the series. I never finished the entire trilogy. I did 1 many times. Loved 1 mainly because of Saren. I thought he was the baddest badass that ever badassed.
Great villain.
And then really enjoyed 2 as well. But by the time 3 rolled around, it just sort of wasn't quite up my alley. But I certainly enjoy that sci-fi world more than I do the fantasy of Dragon Age. And sci-fi is the flavor of our next story. We go over to GamesBeat, where Jeff Grubb has penned a piece on the Ascent, which is a brand new action game that you guys spoke about on Backpocket last night, Pete, right?
Yeah.
And it's from Curve Digital, the first game also from Neon Giant, a very small team out of Europe putting this game together. It has generated more than $5 million in revenue and topped the Steam global sales chart over its opening weekend. That's according to publisher Curve Digital, who pens it as a, quote, AAA competitor. The quote from them says, "The Ascent is the first game out of Curve where our team has been able to substantially make their mark, working closely with the developer and our platform partners." This is John Clark from Curve Digital. "This success is the result of a genuine team effort throughout the company, the arrival of new leadership and talent, and is truly reflective of our new approach of being developer and player focused in all that we do." Just quickly, I've been playing a bit of the Ascent with some mates, and have been plagued with quite a few issues, but
all right.
I think those issues aside, you can see the core of what this is, and I really enjoy that when it works properly. Properly, sorry. But yeah, unfortunately, there's just been a couple of audio issues and connectivity issues, and
Right.
I think for the most part, it's I'm most impressed by the world building, the visuals, and the audio. Like the soundtrack is incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope that they get to take another stab at this world, because I would love to see them expand upon what they've learned here,
Yeah.
and bring us something even better next time. How do you feel about it, this one, Pete?
Yeah, I've only put about 90 minutes into the game. I've only played by myself, so I haven't had connectivity issues. Every now and then I hit like a kind of frame spike, um, or dive, I guess, and it kind of catches itself a little bit when maybe a new kind of animation or explosion or effect particle kind of enters the realm, the system. It's like not preloaded in the right ways or something, but uh, I'm really enjoying it, and I think mainly because of it feels like it was made with a lot of care. Despite some technical hiccups, sure, the world design
Mm.
is staggeringly beautiful and detailed and dense. The first part of the game is this hideous sewer. It's not really a sewer, but it's like you're inside a machine
Right.
fixing some clogged bullshit. But it's like, a classic start to a video game. But you're on these little platforms walking around, but just the detail in the background, it's this isometric game. So you're walking around, you can see kind of the platforms that you are meant to traverse,
Mm.
but the tapestry of the background is so alive, and they've got this beautiful array of lighting and cyberpunk design and detail. Um, I'm so like enraptured with how the world feels, that I think I could play through any glitch problem that I encounter just to see what they've done around the next corner. I'm amazed at how gorgeous they've made this thing.
Yeah.
And such a small team.
Yeah, that's the thing that blows me away. The level of detail on display for the team size is out of this world, and they're doing things that they don't even need to do. Like, you're walking on these platforms, and every 50 meters there's like the floor becomes glass, and you can see down deeper into the world. I'm like, you didn't need to do that. You're flexing at this point. That was
Yeah,
totally
totally.
unnecessary. We don't need to be impressed any more than we currently are. So yeah, I think I will continue playing it with my mates just to see more of this world. And look, as I would say, I hope that they find success with this title. Clearly, they have already, based on this press release from Curve. But where I want to take the conversation is the fact that this game is doing so well, and like sales wise, and it is also in Game Pass. What drew my attention to this was a tweet from Matt Piscatella, who's one of the executive directors at the NPD Group, and a lot of sentiment out there, saying this game is succeeding despite Game Pass, and he and Jeff Grubb in his article here contest that it is succeeding because of Game Pass. And I'll go back to Jeff Grubb's article where he says, nothing influences a gamer like other gamers. Sorry. The Game Pass sales bump seems counterintuitive, but a game like The Ascent plays right into it. And that's due to the aforementioned network effect. Gamers often spend a lot of time in close-knit communities on platforms like Discord. Pete, you might be familiar with close-knit communities and Discord, I'm not sure. That means
I've heard of it.
That means when a game like The Ascent comes along, a lot of people start talking about it because of Game Pass. That word of mouth can spread quickly. Playing games with friends is important to a lot of people. Even if a game is single player, many people don't want to miss out on the conversation. But something like The Ascent, which emphasizes cooperative play, is even more well suited to take advantage of these interpersonal networks. If for some reason you don't want Game Pass, you're still more likely to purchase The Ascent so that you're not the member of your normal crew to miss out on a game night. So look, we've seen this a few times now with games that are landing day one in Game Pass, or are tied to Game Pass, shortly after their initial launch. but they
Yep.
still go on to do really well outside of Game Pass. I look at something more recently like Outriders, which was day one, but also topped the Xbox sales charts the week it launched, which doesn't really make sense. We see something like Sea of Thieves, which has been in Game Pass for 3 years now, like, popping up in Steam sales charts week to week as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
are you sort of vibing with what Jeff Grubb and also Matt Piscatella have sort of propositioning here? The idea that Game Pass isn't, sort of impacting the sales of these games in any negative way. It's actually helping boost sales of games that are quite accessible through a subscription service.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think it's the golden goose, right? If Microsoft rock up to your door and say, "Hey, be day one on Game Pass," the only answer is yes. It's like, obviously the Ascent is a strong game. It's I really like it, and it's reviewing quite well. But the fact that you sign up this deal and suddenly you have the Xbox marketing engine working for you is an insane boon. Even just having like a Larry Herb with 1.1 million Twitter followers tweeting about your game in the lead up to launch because it's day one on Game Pass, like, what more could you ask for an independent studio? It's such a strong position to be in, and I'm sure there are plenty of studios out there who would love to be part of it, and I think we'll continue to see similar results for day one game releases going forward. I think the next one will be like a Back for Blood, will be like the next non-Microsoft owned title that's going to be day one on Game Pass. That I think will do really, really well out of getting that attention through Microsoft.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree. I mean, we're seeing like a lot of indie titles, particularly this time of year, drop into Game Pass as well. We mentioned earlier before we started that we're excited for games like 12 Minutes and The Artful Escape as well. You mentioned, Larry Herb tweet. I'm also thinking about the great work that the Xbox social media team does on the Game Pass account, where just for being in Game Pass, you're guaranteed one hilarious tweet out of them that is sure to to reach many more people as well. So I'm really quite. I mean, when Microsoft first announced, they're really sort of backing Game Pass and subscription in a huge, meaningful way and getting these day one deals, there was a question that I think a lot of people are still having around the sustainability of the whole thing. But look, if it's working out for the developers, indie publishers like Curve Digital, us the consumers, and Microsoft, then I don't see a downside other than games that aren't in Game Pass that aren't being played maybe nearly as much because of that. So I do wonder if we're going to see some kind of side effect that's maybe not so favorable for these developers in the near to long term. I'm really not sure. But I'm truly fascinated by what they've constructed here. We've seen Phil Spencer and some publishers come out and mention that by signing with Game Pass and Xbox, that they break even from day one, right? Like Microsoft comes in and funds most, if not all, of the development costs, and then they're able to make additional revenue elsewhere on other marketplaces like Steam or Epic, PlayStation, Nintendo. But at least they don't have to worry about breaking even when they hit go on their launch. So I'm
tell you what, having $1 trillion company running in second is working out pretty good for gamers at the moment.
Yeah, honestly, I think there's one thing that everyone should be wishing for.
They want to win.
Microsoft is always the underdog because
they're
going to bite back harder than any other company can, really. So I'm really interested to see how Game Pass continues to change. And if we see, I think Phil, he was in an episode of Podcast Unlock, which is IGN's Xbox podcast, and he was asked about the sustainability of it all and how it works for publishers, and he noted that success for Xbox will be measured by how many of these publishers actually come back into Game Pass after first adding one of their titles to the service, and I have to guess that it's working for so many of them. I look at someone like Focus Home Interactive, who dropped A Plague Tale Innocence into Game Pass, and that seemingly has done really well. A Plague Tale Requiem was on Xbox's E3 stage and is now an exclusive, and day one in Game Pass also. So, yeah, I can't wait to see how this service continues to impact it, because here's hoping we see, like you mentioned, the competitiveness of someone like Microsoft, right? I want to see other platform holders fight back as well and offer even more value. Like we saw with Epic Game Store, right? They come in there, they shake up the PC marketplace. They're offering, an 88-12 split on revenue as opposed to Steam's 70-30. And immediately we see all these publishers shift over. I'm hoping someone can come along and, who knows, maybe even offer more value than Game Pass.
Then who could possibly like undercut their business so hard like Microsoft? Obviously with long-term goals, but like, I mean, no one's got that pile of cash sitting around. Maybe Apple.
I think, yeah, that's obviously the main point, but also who has the appetite to really invest that much into the gaming space, right? I thought maybe Amazon, they have their whole Luna service going on right now. They have a couple of internal studios, New World, obviously just around the corner. I think they also own Double Helix, though I'm not entirely sure what they're working on at this point. We saw Google back out really quickly once Xbox picked up Bethesda, and they're like, okay, we're out. We can't compete with that. So yeah, I hope that, and also, we speak about competition. I hope that, in 5 years' time, Xbox is fighting just as hard to be as number one, and they don't get complacent or arrogant as well. So
I think if Satya Nadella starts trying to get into space, that's when they'll stop putting so much money into Xbox. But at the moment, we're fine. He's happy on Earth.
He is happy. Thank God for that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that might take. That might be the thing that that is the sort of the last right, or the thing that makes this all undone, is that if like Phil steps down and we get some lunatic come in and try and shake things up, or if Satya, I don't know. Anyway,
we must preserve Phil. He's too precious.
Anyway, let's move on now to story number 3. It is all Nintendo. They released numbers for their latest Switch hardware sales milestone, and it is massive. They have now eclipsed lifetime sales of Xbox 360 and PS3. We head on over to Nintendo Life, where Ryan Craddock pens the piece. Switch hardware sales reach 89 million, despite facing a year-on-year slump. We can see the numbers here. There, I'll zoom in for everyone so those in chat can see as well. The only console of their own that they're chasing at this point is Nintendo Wii, and at the rate that they're selling, they'll eclipse that probably early next year. I mean, having said that, 11 million between now and Christmas isn't impossible, particularly given the launch of the OLED Switch model in October as well. I've been rattling on about how impressed I am by this, Pete, particularly earlier when they announced 84 million in the space of 4 years. I mean, it took 8 years for the 360 way back when to achieve that number. Like what are your thoughts on just Nintendo's dominance? I suppose we're starting to see, Valve enter the handheld space with the Steam Deck. Do you see them slowing down anytime soon?
I don't think they'll slow down. I do think it's a wonderful accomplishment. It's a wonderful system. I would love to see a Switch Pro, like many people would, a bit more power in the hand. But I do think they've built something really beautiful. I guess the only thing that they've done to their own that may have shot themselves in the foot is that while they were selling Wiis, they were also selling Nintendo DSs. And you can't forget the Nintendo DS as a handheld. Well, the stats are just there straight underneath. The DS family ended up selling 154 million. That's their highest selling console of all time.
Yeah.
More than the Wii. And so they've basically combined their two hardware kind of outputs into one. So while I think they'd be really happy with how the Switch is going, I'm sure they'll want it to do like really, really, really well and blow the Wii out of the water. Because they're not selling DSs right now. They are the handheld and the home console.
Yeah. So you noted 154 million. I think PS2 is at 155, still the best-selling console of all time. PS4 just announcing it's 116 million. I think it comfortably takes third spot, but whether it reaches 150 in its lifestyle, I'm not sure. We really see, it's the mainstream popularity of things like the PS2 and the DS way back when that got them to that number as well, right? And a combination of a 99 or a 149 US dollar price tag that really elevates them to that number. PS2 rode on the fact that it was like the SingStar machine, but also the cheapest DVD player on the market.
Yeah.
And the DS as well. You had Nintendogs and Brain Training, all these mainstream titles that appeal to not just the gamer demographic. I think Switch is clearly pursuing that with things like Ring Fit Adventure, which we'll get to in a moment, has sold very, very well for Nintendo. But yeah, I suppose I was going to ask, do you see them getting to 150 million? I think by answering that, you also need to ask the question: do we see a Switch successor before they hit that milestone? Right now, we're about 4.5 years from the launch of the OG Switch. So, do you think they can become maybe the best-selling console of all time?
I think that will depend on software over the next few years. I think they need to have I think it's maybe unfair to call them out for this, but they need to have a faster turnaround of like Switch games that are best on Switch, games that are only on Switch, because by putting themselves in the position where they were sitting next to the last gen of PlayStation and Xbox, and running games like Doom, I think games like Doom on the Switch only make them look bad. And that's, again, not really fair. It's great that people who only have the one console can play Doom, but they're getting such a bad version of Doom, where they're getting the best version of Animal Crossing. They're getting brilliant 3D Mario platformers. They're getting Breath of the Wild, arguably the best Zelda game, and a revolution and a just astoundingly gorgeous game. I hope the open world Pokemon game is a thing that Pokemon games always sell like hotcakes. Yeah. So I think that could be a new system mover for them. That could be a reason for someone to refresh a Switch that they've had for 5.5, 6 years at that point. So there's definitely a lot more Switches that are going to move off shelves, but I don't know that they will get to 150.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit skeptical as well. Evil Spyboy, thanks in the chat, also noted, not pictured, OG Game Boy, 118 million, and the DS, 154 million. Lord Phoenix says, better kickstand would be nice, and I think that's something they're accommodating with the OLED, right?
The OLED, yeah.
Something of a much more flexible kickstand. Neon Mirror Jason, thanks for joining us, man. Give me Bayonetta 3 and it'll be the best-selling console. He's going to buy an additional 50
You're going to buy
just for Nintendo.
60 million consoles.
Lord Phoenix says, need more Marios and Zeldas. Speaking of Mario and Zelda, Nintendo also released updated figures for their top 10 best-selling Nintendo Switch games as of the 30th of June 2021. These numbers are insane. Number 1, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 37 million. Animal Crossing, 33 million. Smash Brothers, 24 million. Breath of the Wild, 23 million. Pokemon Sword and Shield, 21 million. Odyssey, 21 million. Mario Party, 15 million. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, 13 million. Splatoon 2, 12 million. And Ring Fit Adventure, 11 million. We're talking about 10 first-party Nintendo games that collectively have sold better than most PlayStation and Xbox first-party games from the last decade, which just blows my mind. Continuing to prove that for most people, I would say, the Switch is certainly still their Nintendo machine. So, I agree. They have a strong lineup, right, of games that have been announced. We have Breath of the Wild 2, Bayonetta 3, Metroid on its way sometime, Splatoon 2. There's a new Pikmin, right? Still on its way also.
There is a new Pikmin coming.
Pokemon games.
Just looking at these 10 games, it's like, if you ignore Pokemon Let's Go, because there's Pokemon Sword and Shield there, all of those games are so brilliant, so Nintendo, all different, they I mean, it's making me feel awful for saying they're not doing enough, because like that's an astounding list of games to have: a Mario Kart, Animal Crossing, Smash Bros, Breath of the Wild, Pokemon, Mario Odyssey, Mario Party, Splatoon, Ring Fit. It's like they're so varied, those titles. They're all in-house or exclusive, and just, I mean, yeah, the one that sold the worst has sold 11 million copies.
Right. Yeah, and also,
Incredible.
like, you know, all within the last 4.5 years. I mean, yeah, you can contest obviously games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, re-releases of Wii U titles from years gone by. But yeah, and also one thing that I like to note always with Nintendo games, some of the cheapest games to develop as well, right? Like, they're not reinventing the wheel with a lot of this. Like,
Yeah,
Super Mario Party, 15 million. Like, I can't imagine how little
printing money.
that game would have cost to make. Also, I put out a tweet just today. I look at something like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 37 million copies. How are there not dozens of kart racing clones at this point? Like, we've seen Sega and Activision take a stab, you know, with Crash Bandicoot and
Sonic All Stars.
Yeah, Sonic All Stars in the past. But how is no one just chasing that number? Like, you'd be happy with 10% of those players, right?
Totally.
Like,
I don't know why Sony isn't forcing Naughty Dog to be making more races. They're wasting their time on these Lasts of Us's and Uncharted's.
I was about to say, just pull Bethesda off Starfield and get them on a Fus Radar kart racing game or something, just through the lands of Skyrim, you know?
Yeah. Fus for a kart.
Yeah. But no, honestly, it still blows my mind that we're not getting any Mario Kart equivalent, particularly on those platforms where you can't play Mario Kart, right? Like, I know Xbox attempted it with Joyride Turbo, which was like a Kinect game that became like an Xbox Live Arcade game back in the day. It was actually quite adequate. It was a fine kart racer. And you've seen Sony attempt it with Little Big Planet kart racing, or just racing.
Yeah.
And then there was that one that was from Mod Nation Races as well, back in the PS3.
Yeah,
that gave it a crack. That
they just always try to be cool. They try to look cool, and they don't have that thing, you know. And like, the last game to give Mario Kart a run for its money really was Diddy Kong Racing on Nintendo.
Oh. Now you're talking about Diddy. Like, I'm a Diddy Kong Racing.
It's a better game.
It's a better game, Pete. Yes.
It's a better game.
Yes. It's a better game.
It doesn't sell 37 million copies, and
it might nowadays. We don't know. We don't know.
It could.
Yeah. It's a funny. I think. I'd have to check the Nintendo 64 numbers, but I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold more than Nintendo 64 at, like, the hardware.
Really?
Platform. I think 64 landed in the 20 million range, somewhere between 20 and 30. I'd have to double check.
Isn't that funny? It felt like it felt ubiquitous. Every person in the world, in my world, every kid had a Nintendo 64, right? Like, or a PlayStation. But like, it was like everyone had a gaming console in my sphere. So that's astounding how much gaming has grown. The industry has grown. You know, we see these console sales of 89 million Switches sold, but also you got to take into account the fact that just more households are console households. There's just more people on the planet buying consoles because gaming's fucking awesome, and everyone wants to be doing it.
Agreed. Yeah,
that's awesome.
There was a great. I can't remember who posted it way back when, but you know, when there was a lot of conversation, at least at the time, happening around video game addiction. I think it might have been Seamus Byrne, actually, local journalist who either put together a piece or a series of tweets that like really just resonated with me. He just the basic sentiment was, you know, these games, people are hooked on games because they're just that fun. Like, there's not necessarily anything, you know, inherently designed to be addictive about them. Yeah, exactly. It's just, has anyone ever considered that it is more fun than anything else on the planet right now? Like, that might be the truth.
I love Seamus.
He's the best.
And that is a good take.
Yes.
And I'm sure it was backed up by actual journalistic research and reporting.
Yeah.
But as a sentiment, I'm down.
Yeah. Everyone go follow Seamus on Twitter as well. I think he's just SEA.
I think he's
MUS.
Yeah.
I think he's just Seamus.
I think he is. I think he scored Seamus. He's been, you know, he's been in the tech space forever, so I'm sure it would have been on Twitter day one.
Yeah. Anyway, that is the top 3 gaming news stories from the past week. Look how much fun you can have talking about financial earnings reports, Peter. Okay, I'm going
Love
to
it.
make this a bi-weekly segment from now on. Just off the back of that, how much fun we had. Anyway, we'll pivot now into the second half of the show, and that is question time. We bring in one big theme, topic, or trend from the industry to discuss and dissect. And lo and behold, more financial earnings to discuss, this time from the runaway success that is PlayStation. We head on over to gamesindustry.biz, where James Batchelor, editor-in-chief, has this piece based off of Sony's latest reports. PlayStation's Q1 sales rise to $5.6 billion, but operating income down 40%. Now, the big pieces to come out of this, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of the console and how well it sold. We know recently it actually hit 10 million pieces of units of hardware sold, pardon me, which is faster.
They're not even Ring Fit Adventure numbers, mate.
I know. I mean, you've got to be so disappointed, right? But that is a month ahead of PlayStation 4 at the same point in its life cycle, making it the fastest PS5, the fastest selling piece of PlayStation hardware in the sort of the Sony's history in the video game market. They're doing really, really well at the moment, and they said that they have secured enough units, or enough components to craft enough units to meet 22 million consoles within their next financial year, which I think runs to the 31st. So yeah, really exciting stuff for PlayStation. They're doing very well, but that's not where I want to take the main conversation.
I like that they're framing it like they're playing Minecraft, and they've acquired enough mats to now craft the rest of the consoles they need.
One interesting piece to come out of this was actually a decrease in a PlayStation Plus subscriber count, which is the first time this has happened in one of their quarters in a very long time. They've been on this steep incline of 40, 45, 47 million PlayStation Plus subscribers. Over on Push Square, Liam Croft notes that they lost 1.3 million subscribers in the previous quarter. He says, let's see here, there are now 46.3 million members of PlayStation Plus. That's a loss of 1.3 million subscribers compared to the previous quarter. Across fiscal year 20, so last year, recorded 45 million memberships in Q1, 45.9 in Q2, still up to 47.4 in Q3, and then finished 47.6 in Q4, and then that drops back down to 46.3. I like to note here as well, just for comparison's sake, that you take a PlayStation Plus subscription, which is half the cost of something like Game Pass, yet you have more than double the subscriber count, right? So it's important to note that Sony is making as much revenue on PlayStation Plus subscribers as Microsoft is for Game Pass. Evil Spyboy, I would like to know if that correlates to an increase in Xbox Live membership. Yeah, that could be something to factor in as well. We don't know Xbox Live Gold numbers. Microsoft doesn't release those. They just release active users of their platform, which could be someone signing into Xbox Live on their Switch to play Minecraft, for instance. So yeah, we don't have a hard figure for them. But yeah, I suppose where I wanted to start this conversation, Peter, is PlayStation Plus subscribers. They continue to be a huge part of, an important part of Sony's place within the video game market, and we've seen them deliver some fantastic deals to the PlayStation Plus community recently, with things like Oddworld recently being released day one into PlayStation Plus, and also Hunter Arena, I think it's called, or one of the August games as well, a brand new title in PlayStation Plus. I've long said that this is something that Sony should lean into as their competitor to Game Pass and just continue to bolster this service. But yeah, when you think of PlayStation Plus, how do you feel about the service, and where do you think Sony should be taking it to continue increasing these numbers, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I think a part of what made Gold and then PlayStation Plus feel like, they always felt required for multiplayer players, because they were. PlayStation has a stranglehold over the COD market, which is a massive strength for them. Yep. They know that 20 million of those 40-something million are people who want to be playing COD on their platform. So they've got them for life, as long as they've got COD for life. And so I think it's been interesting watching PlayStation Plus become a more and more uh, value for money proposition for gamers. Um, I think that they saw the trend of gold games with gold back on the 360 of even if you're giving games away for free, uh, it increases the perceived value of the product massively. And I probably played 3 games for free through games for gold and PlayStation Plus as well. It's like it's just a really nice thing to have attached to this $15 a month or whatever you're paying. So it's like I I would love I agree. I would love to see them add more value to that and get more day one titles on there and make it a bit more of a competitor to Game Pass. And yeah, I think a dip down to 46 from 47, I don't think they would love that, but I also don't think they're going to be hitting panic buttons at PlayStation. It's been an odd 12 months of people being in lockdown.
Yep.
In a lot of places around the world, not in Australia, we're both in lockdown right now, but in a lot of places around the world, people are able to get out and about more now. They're more vaccinated. Things are starting to open up again. And so maybe there's just people spending less time at home. I think this trend could be affected by so many different external factors that I think there would take a few more months of a downward trend for them to start thinking something's going wrong.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, then the only thing that they're going to do, they're not getting rid of PlayStation Plus, is they're going to start making it more of a value prospect for gamers and putting more stuff, attaching more stuff to it. And that's good for gamers.
Definitely. Yeah. There was an update to the Push Square story. Chief Financial Officer Hiroki Totoki, which is a great name.
That is.
Noted, quote, via VGC, sorry, quote, of course, 104 million is not a strong number. They were talking about the actual active players, not just subscribers in this instance. But we are looking at this as a declining... but are we looking at it as a declining trend, ? We don't think so. We're trying to analyze different elements, but there are no conspicuous trends that we can capture. Maybe this month or next month we will have to continue to watch and do an analysis. At the risk of repetition, may I say that the last year the stay-at-home demand was so significant in hindsight, so compared to that period last year, as a trend, of course, it's declined, but compared to fiscal 2019 there is an increase. So yeah, to your point, I think peak of stay-at-home orders, right, for most of the world, particularly in Europe as well, around that March-April period. Like the games industry exploded. Like I was still at Ubisoft at the time. You saw active numbers just shoot through the roof for all titles, and that's not just unique to Ubisoft, of course. But you're probably seeing that that 12-month subscription lapse, and no one's in lockdown anymore, so they just expire. So yeah, I think to Toki's point, we'll probably see and to your point as well, if there is a pattern into the next quarter, then they might be concerned. But also, first half of this year, a bit dry release-wise compared to most years as well, right? Like we've had things like Resident Evil, Outriders, Hitman in January, but for the most
Returnal.
part...
Returnal end of last year?
Returnal started this year.
Returnal was this year,
April, I think, yeah. But also, not a multiplayer game, right? So probably not key in driving that the subscription. So yeah, let's pivot now to another piece that didn't come out of the financial earnings report, but is still related to Sony, and that is Ghost of Tsushima Legends getting a standalone release. Of course, this is the free multiplayer update that Sucker Punch added to post-launch for Ghost of Tsushima last year. Proved very popular and something that was beloved amongst the Ghost community, now becoming its own standalone version, which on press start, Shannon writes, will launch on September 3rd and set you back $19.99 about 27 Australian dollars. The team has also announced that the game is getting a new mode called Rivals on September 3rd. That'll bring new trophies and cosmetics. In Rivals, teams of 2 will compete to defeat waves of enemies. Defeating foes will earn you Magatama, which you can use to harm the other team, with the goal being to complete the wave before the other team can. So not direct PvP, but still competitive in some sense. Pete, keen to get your thoughts on PlayStation's now very honest shift towards providing more multiplayer focused experiences. We've seen a lot of second party deals being struck with the likes of Deviation, former Treyarch folk working on a multiplayer title. We also have forgetting the name of the others, like Haven Studios, again working on something that's rumored to be a games of the service piece. We have Last of Us Factions still being developed by Naughty Dog. They've been very upfront in saying we want to make more multiplayer games of a service titles. And a couple of episodes ago, when I had Ryan Betson from The Pop Culturist on the show, huge PlayStation fan and runs a fantastic PlayStation podcast called For the Players. Encourage you guys to all check it out. We were talking about the fact that this might be a great way for them to very uniquely position themselves in the multiplayer space, understanding that they probably don't have the studios to compete with the likes of Fortnite and Apex and Call of Duty. So yeah, what do you make of Legends, about a year after its initial launch, becoming a standalone experience? And do you think this is something we can probably see more of from PlayStation?
I think this is a testing ground for PlayStation, and if it's successful, I think there's no doubt we'll see more. To your point of it being kind of dry with releases, they have a really beloved title in Ghost of Tsushima. The multiplayer, I know my wife played a lot of Ghost of Tsushima and enjoyed the multiplayer, but maybe it didn't attract an audience outside of the Ghost of Tsushima players that already existed in a way that they were hoping it would. And being able to promote it as a standalone title, putting more features into it, and putting a much cheaper price of entry on it, could be a really nice way for them to attract a new crowd to the IP of Ghost of Tsushima. People who fall in love with this might want to go and play the single player afterwards. And it's a way for them to leverage a really strong IP in a way that should be relatively easy to kind of lift out of the pre-existing title, and maybe get some more game sales, and definitely boost those PlayStation Plus numbers, because they're declining, aren't they? Oh,
They're in trouble.
So I think I often struggle with when Naughty Dog go and put multiplayer in Uncharted, and there's a group of people who are like, the multiplayer in Uncharted is great. I'm like, the multiplayer in Uncharted's kind of shit, and they put resources into it that could have been put into making the single player, the story stronger. And maybe that doesn't always get in the way, but it's like, I don't think every game needs a multiplayer. But where those multiplayers exist, I'm absolutely for modular game releasing. We've seen a little bit of that with COD as a download function, of being like, you don't have to download zombies if you're never going to play it.
Right, yeah.
Which is, your SSD thanks you for that. So I think it's an interesting move. I think it could be a really strong way to move forward in first party Sony titles. And yeah, if this does well, I would be surprised if we don't see, maybe they'll call Bluepoint and go make a PvP Demon's Souls for us, because we need to put something out between now and next holiday season.
Yeah, who knows? Neon Mirror again in chat: during this lockdown, I feel like I want more single player games to chill out on my own and escape into worlds. He also says playing The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima last year were really good, powered through them. Be really interested to see if they make a sequel to Ghost. Curious to see where they can take the story narratively, as it was based on true events in. Yeah, so no doubt that obviously the PlayStation hardcore are absolutely pining for sequels to a lot of these beloved single player experiences. But yeah, I'm at least for the moment of the mind that if Sony wants to play in the multiplayer space, that I'm not so sure it's smart to chase the same the same piece of the pie that so many other big established games already occupy, right? Like, we've seen so many battle royale games come and go, and it's only really the big dogs that can stick around. And even someone like Ubisoft with Hyperscape, with their huge backing, can't make it work, right? So yeah, no, I hope that we don't see them, go toe to toe with some of these big guys and create more experiences that are going to be more appealing to the fan base that they currently serve, right? And I think Last of Us Factions already is testament to that. I think, yeah, you see them expand on something like Legends with this standalone release, and hopefully we'll grow it into something that becomes somewhat of its own thing, right? Like maybe we see the single player story continue with this portion of the Sucker Punch development team, but then we see this Splinter team split out and create something that's a bit of more of a live service multiplayer cooperative experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be competitive, every time they put together a multiplayer game, but
Sure.
yeah, I keep, you start to see things like Insomniac very publicly posted they are hiring for a new multiplayer project as well. Is that going to be something that's brand new, or is it a cooperative Spider-Man game where we're bringing in Spider-Man from all over the multiverse? Who knows? One can dream. So yeah, I'm so fascinated to see where they go with their multiplayer strategy. I think that's kind of a big question mark right now, because it's
Absolutely.
not something that they've done in a very long time, right? They had multiplayer experiences last generation, and we saw them, really try in the PS3 generation with things like Killzone and Resistance, and to your point, Uncharted and Last of Us as well. So yeah, and even like God of War Ascension, Ratchet and Clank All for One, I think it was called. They've really tried to, I don't know, shoehorn's probably a bit too negative of a word to use here, but look, I really hope they succeed here, because, for the most part, I think they're servicing one audience really, really well with that cinematic, story-driven experience.
Just such premium single-player games. Yeah. I mean, like every single title that they put out for the PS5 has been astonishingly strong, and maybe not always for everyone, but a really strong outing for the genre that they're aiming for. I mean, Demon Souls was so refined. Returnal, brilliant if you're into that, like a brilliant version of a roguelike. And then of course they've got Ratchet and Clank. What an achievement that was.
Just give Insomniac all the games, please. Let them make everything at this point.
Totally. But you're right. You can't just go, well, a Ratchet and Clank multiplayer is going to work. They've got an interesting couple of years ahead where they start to lose the Bethesda third-party titles. I'm sure maybe some will make it across to PlayStation, but it seems unlikely that anything over the next few years is going to head across to PlayStation after Deathloop. They've got some holes to fill, for sure.
Yeah. We have Joshy20 in the chat saying a Spider Island multiplayer Battle Royale would be phenomenal. Spider Island, I'm not familiar. Is this a hardcore Spider-Man reference? Pete,
that sounds like a comic book thing. Spider Island.
It sounds pretty hardcore.
Yep, 2011 comic book storyline with the I think amazing Spider-Man arc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, time will tell on Sony's multiplayer strategy. And another strategy I'm looking forward to seeing them sort of unveil to us is what they're going to do with their next generation PlayStation VR. There is a report about a rumor on Push Square that states Sony targeting AAA titles for stunning next-gen PS5 VR headset. Sammy Barker writes, Sony is eager to propel virtual reality into a new era as it targets AAA content for its next-gen PlayStation VR headset, which sounds both incredible and seriously expensive. As part of a developer presentation earlier in the week, which we can corroborate did take place, the Japanese giant introduced its new technology to major studios around the globe. Many of the details coming out of the event have been reported before. The headset features Fresnel OLED screens, not Samsung, with 2000 by 2040 resolution per eye, although there is now talk of HDR, which would help with contrast and color clarity. The field of view is 110 degrees, an increase of 10 degrees on the existing PSVR headset, and it has haptic feedback built in to help reduce motion sickness, which I'm really curious to understand how that might work. Research has proven that mapping a slight here we go, they're about to explain it to me. Research has proven that mapping a slight vibration to, for example, footsteps can trick the ear canal into thinking that you're walking, which in turn can help to reduce that lurching feeling that's common during virtual reality locomotion. Don't expect the headset to buzz like crazy. This should be more a subtle feature to help ground you in the experience. Yeah, so I won't rattle through all of this. Here we go. This is more talk about the actual AAA content. And here's where it gets really exciting, perhaps recognizing that the standalone Oculus Quest is now its primary competition. Sony seems to be targeting AAA content. Apparently, it wants to move away from the proof of concept experiences that were common on the original PSVR and focus on full-blown games. Interestingly, there's chatter of it tasking its first-party developers with creating hybrid software, or in other words, titles that can be played both traditionally on a television and in virtual reality, like Resident Evil Biohazard. Whether this can pan out, whether this will pan out, remains to be seen. It would take a lot of work to convert something like The Last of Us Part 2 to VR, but it's certainly exciting if it can pull this off. Now, speaking about the Resident Evil 7 example here, this isn't something that's, wholly brand new. We've seen titles like that attempt that in the previous generation of PlayStation VR. We even saw, I think it was a Drive Club as well, come out with a VR title or version also. I would assume that Gran Turismo is going to get the same treatment, and I think it did back in the day. I can't tell you, I'm not a huge Gran Turismo fan. But yeah, what do we think of this, sort of pivoting away from these very, VR crafted for VR experiences, and I suppose creating experiences that can be hopefully as compelling on a big 4K screen as they are in virtual reality.
Yeah, I appreciate. Let me preface this by saying I hate VR, um, but I do really appreciate what PSVR was able to accomplish by being the right price point, having a huge amount of systems to move the headset for in the PS4, and it really was, I think, the thing that kept VR ticking as a market.
I think to this day
through the
still
tough times,
still the best selling VR headset at this
yeah,
point.
yeah. Like I think it over 5 million sold to consumers. I think the Oculus Quest, which I have one right here and I never use it, it's still less than 2 million. Heaps better technology in my opinion, the Quest 2 than the PSVR, but it's just like, it's the process of VR is this thing that I still find really hard to commit to. I don't like closing myself off in these things, particularly for games that maybe feel undercooked or just like a fun little tech demo. But I do think they have the capacity to be really atmospheric. And the best thing that I ever put a VR headset on for was the Resi 7. It was called the Kitchen or something.
Demo?
The Kitchen demo?
I remember playing that at work when I was still at UB. We had a PSVR headset and we downloaded it, and I couldn't leave the first room. I'm terrible. I hate horror games. I cannot stand them.
It is honestly like the most affecting gaming moment I've ever had. The way, like, what VR can do to add to a gaming experience, particularly a horror gaming experience, is incredible. I really hope that the new version of PSVR sells just as well. If PS5 consoles continue to sell as well as they are, then they have a really good consumer base to tap into. And yeah, it's just driving. It's keeping the tech driving, where you can only play Beat Saber so many rounds before you're like, nah, that was Beat Saber. And if every title for the PS5 has some way to like enjoy it with the headset on, I think it's going to be a really cool piece of kit to have in the house as an option.
Yeah, I just want to get back to chat. Jason also notes, Ghostwire Tokyo, PlayStation exclusive, that was pushed into 2022, pardon me, as well. So, still one of those exclusive titles coming from Bethesda. Also notes Half-Life Alyx on PSVR would be interesting. Again, maybe a port that could land at the launch of this next generation PlayStation VR headset. Still the best game he's played on Oculus is Beat Saber. I agree. My previous roommate, he was absolutely hooked on on Beat Saber, and I would jump in there and just boot up Blinding Lights every time. Like a fan created sort of map, I suppose is what you call them, and it
Yeah.
was a blast. Evil Spy Boy, when VR is good, it is very good. When it is bad, it is bad. Sadly, there is more bad due to sheer volume, I guess, of content, I suppose. People just putting out games that aren't the the best experience here. So yeah, look, PlayStation have said, right, when they first launched PlayStation VR, I think it was Shuhei Yoshida who noted that they're viewing this like the same way they view launching the original PlayStation, right? This is very much in its infancy, and they are committed for the long haul, right? Now, obviously, things can change with change in leadership and whatnot, and if the first PSVR bombed badly, then you might not see the same enthusiasm a couple of years later from.
If Shuhei Yoshida wants to go to space, we're not going to see any more PSVR units.
I was about to say, yeah, unless unless of course they can sell as many copies as Ring Fit and just can fund all these other titles. Anyway, tangent. But yeah, obviously it's done well enough for them that they are, positioning PSVR as this huge neck. And if it can be the PS2 of VR, whatever that might mean, then, I don't expect it to sell.
You reckon 150 million?
155.
Oh, okay.
Book it, Pete. Write it down. Someone clip that. But look, if it can bring VR to the market in a way that has broad appeal at an accessible price point, which based on the technology in this thing, good luck to them. But look, I think potentially smart again to be to, I suppose, leverage the fact that you have these studios creating all these fantastic experiences, instead of putting them to task on VR specific games for this headset that's obviously going to draw manpower away from the big AAA titles that they're really known for. Then I'm not sure that's the smartest thing, and also something that I'm sure the PlayStation fan base wouldn't love either. Already these PlayStation Studios games are on like 5-year plus dev cycles for some of them, right? And the budgets are completely blown out as well, and they're only going to get more expensive. So if you can repurpose some of these experiences and create compelling VR experiences on top of them, I'm all for it. I just hope, again, it just doesn't balloon those budgets any more than they currently are, because we know that the sustainability of some of those development cycles as well just isn't there. And I also am, I wouldn't say concerned, but I'm just mindful that how much of your resource as PlayStation on the studios front can you really give to VR when a competitor like Xbox is rocking up with 23 studios and has ambitions to put out AAA games at least every 3 months going into something like Game Pass? So is it smart to split your resources in that fashion? You already noted earlier, Pete, about the beauty of having a combined platform in the Switch, right, where you don't have Nintendo first party developing for DS and then also the Wii U, or Game Boy Advance and the GameCube back in the day, for instance, right? It's just all your development resources are going to one platform, and I think you see that with Vita falling away for the longest time, and no ambition from Sony to really invest in handheld, that all of their studio manpower is going into console titles, these AAA experiences that the fan base knows and loves. So that's enough for my rant, I suppose. But could you see these these AAA experiences in VR being, I suppose, a sensible way to tackle this next generation, or do you think it's those more bespoke experiences that are going to be important in really selling it to the market?
I think both are important. I think they have, the challenge of VR at the moment is that you need so much hardware, not just like to wear a headset and stuff, but you need a good PC to play something like Half-Life Alyx, and then you need to buy your Oculus setup as well. The really easy point of entry with PSVR makes it something that's really like compelling. If you own a PlayStation and you're interested in VR, why wouldn't you go the PSVR? To be able to play AAA titles in it, I think for them to be supported in a way that feels good, I think is important. But I do think that if they're putting this hardware out there, they're going to need some proper VR titles as well. I think they're lucky in that they have now another few years of really good VR titles from third parties that they'll be able to kind of promote. even things like squadrons.
Yeah.
And yeah, if they could score Half-Life Alyx, I mean, what a get. So those kinds of things I think will be important to them. But I think that like we haven't heard rumblings from Microsoft in a while about support for VR on the Xbox. So I think at the moment it's a point of difference for PlayStation, and they should lean pretty hard into that and say, hey, if you are only a console gamer and you want some really cool powerhouse VR experiences, you got to be on PlayStation. Because I think even despite the fact that the PSVR was arguably one of the worst versions of VR at the time of launch, it was so accessible and it was still effective enough. It just was like a million cables, which I'm sure they'll sort out.
The PlayStation Move controller as well, like
yeah,
technology from 2011 coming back. It was just not ideal.
Yeah. But I'm glad it did well enough that they're giving it another shot. And like, I think if they get it right, it could be that you see people going out to buy a PlayStation 5, VR enthusiasts going out to buy a PlayStation 5 because it's the best, easiest place and tidiest place to have a VR setup in your house. You see like VR arcade experiences, people walking around with backpacks with PCs on their back so they can wear a Rift on their face. It's like, you get a PlayStation 5, which admittedly is very heavy, but it's a reasonably compact, reasonably portable VR solution. So it's the kind of thing that you could set up in a major living space that has the right amount of room for VR experiences that you can also pack away tidily at the end of the day, which is maybe a little harder with a PC. So yeah. I think if they're going for it, they should go for it hard. And I hope they have the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's just my biggest concern. Jason agrees. Good enough is good enough for something like PlayStation VR, at least that first iteration. Evil Spyboy says, everything said with VR games on PSVR are trying to be more narrative or licensed. Iron Man VR and Blood of Truth came to mind. Meanwhile, Oculus get things like Beat Saber and Superhot that get ported once they are proven. You mentioned Microsoft as well, Pete. I think, the last we heard from them was the fact that they kind of want to leave it to the PC space for now. Yeah. And the biggest hurdle, like you raised as well, is that, I suppose, intimidation factor that mainstream audience might have when they see the need to plug it into 4 USB ports, and you've got this, this little
you
mini
need tripods
box
for the extra cameras to go behind sensors and stuff.
Like, exactly. Okay. So I think we get to the point where it's like wireless or almost wireless. That one cord experience, and the controllers don't look like something out of Minority Report. They're just. Who knows? That might never happen. But I think all of that combines to be like, oh, I'm not sure this is for me, right? But look, here's hoping, with the backing of the PlayStation's first-party studios, they can really hammer it home this time. I get most excited about putting the tech in the hands of someone like Insomniac, and when they combine it with what they did with something like Ratchet and Clank, can you imagine being in VR and like reaching your arm into one portal and it coming out the other to grab? Like the mind boggles thinking about what
you've made me motion sick just saying that.
Well, thanks. You've got a headset that vibrates on your temples now.
That's true.
At this point. So
that's true.
Yeah, get your ear canal stimulus going or whatever they said. Anyway, one more point out of PlayStation for today, and I didn't come from their earnings report, but at the very end of last week, we got a report from, Bloomberg, which was corroborated from something that Jeff Grubb had mentioned on one of his podcasts as well, that PlayStation has decided, just not publicly yet, to delay Horizon Forbidden West from its 2021 release into early 2022. Obviously, Herman Holst, head of PlayStation Studios, noted not too long ago that they were still on track for a 2021 release, but it's something that they were still not certain that they'd hit. It would appear that it's going to be pushed into 2022, which kind of leaves PlayStation with somewhat of an empty holiday window, with only titles like Deathloop and Kenna Bridge of Spirits to really fill in that exclusive gap. But in doing so, they've actually, put together what might be an insane 2022 for PlayStation. So far, the titles confirmed for next year, at least on track for the moment, include Horizon Forbidden West, if it is indeed delayed, the new God of War, which currently going by the subtitle Ragnarok, Gran Turismo 7, which got pushed out of this year into next, Forspoken from Square Enix, and of course Ghostwire Tokyo from Bethesda. Already, there's 5 big hitting titles. Pete, do you think that a potential delay of Horizon really impacts them this year? And yeah, like what are you thinking right now about their 2022 lineup? It's looking pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean 2022 looks absolutely amazing for them. I feel like Gran Turismo 7 has been coming out next month since the console came out and just has kept getting pushed back. Just
one of those
in my
games
mind,
is
it's
like, did that
oh,
come
that'll be
out
out
yet?
soon, won't
Did
it?
that-
Is that out?
Yeah.
Have I played that?
Yeah. Is
I
that out or is
finished
that still
didn't I?
3 years
Oh,
away?
it isn't
I'm not
out.
sure.
Okay, yeah, right.
Same with like Dead Island 2. Like, did that ever release? Is that still
Yeah, totally.
3 years away? Not sure.
Selfishly, I would love to play. Horizon feels like a summer, like Christmas break game to me. And maybe it's just because it's beachy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Is that a
There's
weird
lot of sand
thing
in the demo that they recently showed? Yeah, a lot of
hook
blue
into,
skies
but
and
and
palm
I'll
trees.
save Ragnarok for winter next year. I like the full atmosphere to get into it, but if it means a better game and better working conditions for the people making it, then absolutely holding it off is the right call. And yeah, look at that lineup: Ghostwire Tokyo, Forspoken. I mean, they're all kind of must-haves for PlayStation owners. I guess it is a bit disappointing. I feel like it's been. I mean, we see it every console launch, really, that there's maybe a couple of launch titles that are really strong, and then there's a bit of a down period as third-party titles kind of start to come out before the kind of next wave of first parties hit. COVID, I'm sure, has made that gap a little wider this generation. It's been harder to get consoles out as well.
Yep.
So, the people that wanted to buy a PlayStation 5 day one and other people who are still trying to desperately buy one every time they pop up online, they're happy to have a PlayStation 5 in their lives, and if that means going through and getting PlayStation Plus so you can play those those classic hits PlayStation games on your new hardware, then I mean, you're laughing, right? Like, we always want more games, but sometimes we have too many games. So yeah, look, I think the people that have their PlayStations, I mean, I'm looking up at mine right now, the Monolith, and it's just exciting to be in that next generation, and next year is a good one, so I'm happy to wait.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your sentiment that take all the time that you need. Right. This situation kind of gives me like history repeating itself vibes, because when you look back at the start of the PlayStation 4 generation, they had, decent titles in that first year. Their launch lineup aside, we saw infamous Second Son release in early 2014. And I think later that year we had Drive Club and one other smaller title, but it was something like the Order 1886 and Bloodborne that slipped into 2015. So Sony was left with somewhat of an empty holiday period. And in the meantime, you had Xbox rocking up with Sunset Overdrive, the Master Chief Collection, and Forza Horizon 2, which was, fantastic at the time as well. And that didn't phase PlayStation one bit. They continued to sell out, and I think it's going to be the same case here, even though Xbox has Halo, Forza. They've got Age and Psychonauts 2 soon as well, and a couple of day one drops in Game Pass. The appetite for these next gen consoles is so strong that I don't think, even if there was someone who's like, oh, okay, I won't get a PS5 this Christmas, I'll get an Xbox instead, there's going to be 1,000 other people who want that PS5 that guy just gave up as well, right? So, look, I don't think it hurts them. I think it's actually smart to sort of give Guerrilla as much time as they need to make, Horizon Forbidden West as close to a 10 out of 10 as they possibly can. And it will sell better for it at a time when, there are more PlayStation 5s in the wild, and it's also coming to PS4 as well, right? So I'm sure more time can be given to make sure that both versions of the game are great. As I noted earlier as well, the current plan is like they're on track to by the end of March have an install base of 22.5 million units, which is absolutely ridiculous in the space of less than 18 months. So yeah,
That's
on
twice
fire.
as many copies of Ring Fit Adventure.
Oh, they're laughing. Ring Fit, eat your heart out. Anyway, that is going to do it for question time. Yeah, Pete, we're at the end of the show now, so I want to thank you so much for coming along and joining me for what has been a very enjoyable conversation.
Thank you for having me, man. I love what you're doing here.
Oh,
Look forward to following along. And if there are any back pocketeers in the chat, follow and keep tuning in to Shane's stuff, because he's making a lot of good content over here.
Thanks, but yeah, I really appreciate it, and that means a lot coming from someone like yourself. Yeah, I've really enjoyed doing the show. We're only 5 episodes in, but already got some really exciting guests coming up as well. No one any more sexier than the man currently on the screen, so don't get your expectations that high, because I'm not sure it's humanly possible. But for those who are living under a rock, Pete, and don't know who you are and what Back Pocket is, how can they go and check out your fantastic work?
Yeah, head on over to backpocket.gg, which will take you to our link tree, and you'll see all of our links. We're mainly Twitch content, but you'll see us archived on YouTube if you miss out on Twitch, and we're all over socials. So Backpocket is a clothing channel, Evil Spyboy points out.
Thank you, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, just the greatest pants content on the internet you could possibly hope for. Yes, go join the Patreon as well. Join the fantastic community over there. I love all the content that yourself, Steph, Gus, and Nick, and Will, and the whole crew put together. Pete, huge fan. And yeah, really appreciate you taking the time. Also, thank you to everyone who joined us in chat. This has been a fantastic conversation. Like I said, Question Box is your weekly gaming talk show. We are live every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Please check out our past episodes as well. I've had some fantastic guests on, including Neon Mirror in the chat for episode 1 and 0 as well. We've had some great conversations the past few weeks, reviewing the Xbox One generation. Before that, talking about EA and their EA Play Live event, PlayStation's future as well, which is something we dabbled in here. Plenty more content to come, so please do go subscribe to the YouTube channel to check out all my previous content, and for any future content you can follow right here, twitch.tv/magic_cast. Follow me on Twitter as well, at magic_cast also. Pete, thank you once again for joining me, and we will see you all next time.
See you later.